Crested geckos, the adorable little gecko that's easy to care for and quite prolific. It's no wonder why this is the first project for many new breeders. Well, yes, I do believe these guys are pretty easy to breed and get babies going. There are a couple of tips and tricks I think you guys should definitely know before attempting to breed the crested gecko. So stick around, we're going to be talking about some great crested gecko tips, and subscribe if you're new. Would love to have you around. Let's get into it. Today is gonna boggle some people's minds, but just give me a second, let me explain it, and that's going to be, number one, ugly geckos are the way to go? Now, when you're going out to buy a grow-out baby that you intend to breed, you're usually gonna look for an animal that kind of looks like this. This is Mickey, an absolutely gorgeous Super Dalmatian that we produced last year. Plenty of spots with this giant spot on the side, an absolutely awesome guy, in which case you would hopefully know that this animal will grow into something like this. Now, this is Cookie. Cookie is one of our favorite Super Dalmatians over here at DBCB Exotics, an absolutely beautiful girl with plenty of spots. Just take a look at that tail, that body. There are big spots everywhere. And although, yes, Cookie did produced Mickey that we saw a little bit earlier, however, she also produced babies like this. Now, this is a gecko that we also have for sale right now that was sired by Cookie and Spots, and however, something that you are seeing a lack of is Spots. It looks nothing like Mickey. This gecko right here at this age, somewhere around the 3-gram area, only has around 5 spots, which is kind of a bummer. That's what you might think. So we took the equation of pretty geckos and what pretty geckos can make and what they also can make, but let's look at the opposite. And that brings us to Sprinkles. Now, when Sprinkles hatched out of the egg, she had about 3 spots for multiple months. I actually didn't even think she was a Dalmatian just from the lack of spots that she had. However, she grew into this little girl, which, well, she now has plenty of spots, somewhere around, I'd say 20 to 30, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. She's definitely not that super Dalmatian looker, right? The animal that you look with the spots and you're like, wow, that is an awesome Dalmatian, I need that animal. However, this is what I'm going to show you that's going to change your mind. Come on, it's time to do the show. This is one of Sprinkles' offsprings that we've held back this year, an absolutely gorgeous Tiger Super Dalmatian. Now remember folks, the big thing with this is the fact that Dal spots grow as the animal grows. Now when you see an animal with this many spots and spots that are this big, if we count, we probably got around 20 or 30 right off the bat. You know that this animal's gonna end up with 40, 50, 60 spots, and these big spots right now at such a young age, remember, only being around the 3-gram area at this point in time, this is going to be an absolutely exemplary Crested Gecko Super Dalmatian. Now this gecko right here that already has more spots than Sprinkles was actually produced by Sprinkles. This was a Sprinkle times Spice pairing. Now this is the point where you ask yourself, well, Dakota, if an animal like Cookie produces something with 5 spots and an animal with Sprinkles with relatively very low spots produces an animal that's going to have very high spots, then why buy the pretty geckos? This is exactly what I wish I knew before breeding crested geckos, and that's the fact that looks do not matter that much. Now, if you have a crested gecko with few spots that produces animals like this, and you also have a really nice looking crested gecko that I paid a lot more money for, that produces similar looking animals, and the same animals that are also kind of lower quality if we're speaking in breeding terms, what's the point? Sorry to interrupt folks, but just want to let you guys know we do have new merch out. If you are a crested gecko lover, this is the one for you. The Cresty Colt merch. We got the Runit Crested Geckos with this badass pattern. Logo straight in the back. If you guys wanted some more information, you can find that right down there. I got a little Teespring banner. Let's get back into it. At this point, you're asking yourself, well then what do I look for, Dakota? If both of these geckos are producing similar geckos and I'm spending way more money for visuals, what actually should I be looking for? And that's going to be the fact that you should be looking for lineage. Lineage is very important with figuring out what crested geckos can potentially look like when their babies hatch. Now, for me, when I first started, I was totally against lineage. I thought it was so dumb. I thought, and this is mainly because I had pet store geckos at the time, so I didn't have lineage on my animals, so it kind of showed that, like, I didn't like it because I didn't have it. However, knowing what I've known now after doing this for years, I can tell you that lineage does play a huge factor in what a gecko's gonna look like and what a gecko can produce. Now, while we have this generation baby that was made by Sprinkles that we just looked at, we can look at what Sprinkles was made by, which was this gecko. And now this is Xena. Xena is an absolutely incredible gecko gecko, the boldest tiger stripes that I have out of all of my geckos, with of course some amazing pepper flaked sprinkles in there. She is just an awesome girl. And it is with this gecko that I produced Sprinkles, who then produced that baby that we saw. So let's put that all together and understanding why lineage is so important. Now we're gonna get a little technical here, but try to follow along. While Sprinkles does not look the best, she has the genetic makeup of Xena and Spots. So now when you take this gecko that of course doesn't look that well and pair it with a superior male such as Spice that we have over there, we now have Spice genetics playing parts with Sprinkles, who also has the genetic makeup of Xena and Spots, which is making all of these super gel genetics going into the 3rd generation production, of course, that little baby we saw earlier. So now we're not really taking a look at what Sprinkles is, we're taking a look at what made Sprinkles, and that's going to be, of course, Xena and Spots, 2 absolutely awesome animals. Now that makes sense to you guys, simplified version is just because you have 2 pretty geckos doesn't mean you're going to get all pretty geckos, because you have to take into account of what those geckos were made by, what is the lineage of those animals. However, if you have an animal that you know generationally what the pairings were, and if those pairings were all really nice looking geckos, and if the lineage from behind it has some good genetics, you'll have a better understanding of what the gecko's gonna look like versus just taking a shot in the dark. Lineage equals information. Information is a very powerful tool in all trades, including reptile breeding. This is why animals that have multi-generational lineage are gonna be a little bit more expensive than a gecko that you'd find at your average pet store. And then wrapping this up, I think this just leads us to a very important lesson. That's going to be to never judge a book by its cover. While these babies might not look like much, you know, only 3 or 4 spots, who knows what these things can look like in the future and what they'll be able to produce with babies. The 2 things to take away from this video: number 1, lineage, lineage, lineage. Don't make the mistakes like me that I've made in the past where I just buy the pet store geckos because they look nice. You don't know what's gonna come out of those eggs, and you're always gonna have a tougher time selling them, especially in this market where everyone has lineage, and lineage is that important. Number 2, there are underdogs with crested gecko breeding. As we saw before, we had Cookie producing a gecko with only a couple of spots, or we had Sprinkles producing an animal with way more spots. Don't judge that book by its cover, and hey, these geckos surprise you every time. Now folks, it's your turn. Leave me a comment in the comment section. Do you guys care that much about lineage? Did you understand the importance of lineage before watching this video, or were you a silly goose like me, didn't really pay attention to it, and now are kind of biting yourself in the butt after the fact? Of course, we showed off some amazing crested gecko breeders that we actually are breeding here in 2022. If you guys do want some babies, I always show them on Patreon before you get to see them anywhere else. Now, if that interests you, you can always head down to the description and find more information about that below. As always, folks, thank you so much for taking the time to follow us over here at DBCB Exotics. We will see you next time, but until then, goodbye.